Garmag at the Calleary is Stewart, Martina, Calleary, agus Winster McGrail, Ardus, Mead of Weekus, Gotitio, agus an Quista, Hossocht and Curra, the Vehan Shaw live in you. I want to thank you, Joe, and your committee for the invitation to be with you here at what has been a phenomenal week for those of us who have been looking in through all the various media outlets and the various radio and things, and congratulate you on the organisation of that. And I think we can take it for granted that you will always turn up in Glenties in the third week of July or at any festival or event across Ireland, and it will be there. But it's the work that goes in between now and next July, the dark winter nights, be it here in Glenties or in Dublin, where the planning and the plotting and the worrying about finances goes on, that happens behind the scenes, away from the media glare, and happens in thousands of communities across this country to put on the range of festivals and summer events that we have. And to Joe and the committee here, thank you for that work. And to committees all over this island, north and south, thank you for that work, because I dare say there is no equivalent of the Irish Summer School internationally. And I was just looking, and I may be stealing some of the chairman's lines, so if I am, I do apologise. There's an article in this morning's Irish Times, "Will summer schools run out of dead writers?" But it's actually written from the Irish Times archive back in 1990. So I think in the intervening 19 years, we still have a pretty good selection of Irish writers who are probably going to get a summer school named after them. But certainly, judging on this week's show and this week's tour de force, this is the daddy of them all, and it is genuinely a privilege to be here. We meet at a time of enormous economic stress, but equally we meet at a time when cross-border relations have genuinely, I think, never been better, certainly in my lifetime and in the lifetime of the summer school and in the lifetime of most people in this room. And when you reflect on the change atmosphere in terms of political discourse now, as opposed to that of, say, 25 years ago when we were in a similar economic challenge, when the word coming from one part of the island was a very definitive and a very loud no to everything, and to where we are today, and we have such a blasé, really, attitude to all-island cooperation and all-island work, I think it's worth reflecting and worth recalling the journey we have travelled in that time. The fact that we can, and for whatever reason, that we could have an audience here today, myself and Martina, and for whatever reason we were more than likely going to have a Unions Minister discussing these issues. That couldn't have happened 25 years ago. And that we're going to have a frank and open discussion about the potential and about the opportunities. And I think that everybody involved, when you think of all of those people who negotiated and have negotiated north and south during the last 25 years, particularly in the run-in to the Good Friday Agreement, from the Anglo-Irish Agreement to the Good Friday Agreement, the men and the women who gave of their hearts, their souls, of their brains, of many of them their lives to negotiate to get to where we are today, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude. And now that many of them are today are negotiating the bread and butter issues of economy, of social services, of education, of healthcare, and have made that transition, I think that's a reflection that at a time when politics in this country, north and south, is under such pressure and is under such criticism and scrutiny, that politics can work. And I think Frank Miller, who worked for the Irish Times, came up with a description of the journey we've come as a triumph of politics. And I think it's no harm to reflect on that triumph and on that journey. And that triumph and journey sets the context for our debate today. The debate this week has been dominated by one issue, I think, and that be of the minimum wage here in this part of the island. And if I may, Chairman, just to reflect on the minimum wage side of the House, because I am the individual in whose inbox the issue will eventually arrive. And I think when we reflect on industrial relations in the Republic and in Northern Ireland, they are very diverse, and they're very diverse systems, but there's still a great tradition there as well of shared. It's about 100 years ago since tripartite bodies were established in Britain and in Ireland in 1909 for the purpose of establishing minimum wages and other conditions for employees in certain low-paid and vulnerable employments. And indeed, it is in this area, this geographical area, that the move to establish those committees and to establish those basic rights for workers started. Patrick McGill, in his writings, reflected on the deductions, unfair deductions given to home workers who are in knitting, embroidery here and lace making here in Glenties. And the testimonies given by people like Paddy the Cope drove people to set up legislation and to set up basic standards of wages and basic standards of employment. In 1909, those bodies were known as wage councils, and they existed in Britain and in Northern Ireland up until 1993. Here they exist today. They're known as joint labour committees. The Thatcher government repealed the Fair Wages Act, which permitted in Northern Ireland and in Britain collective agreements to be extended to cover all employers within the sector, and that brought to an end in the north and in Britain the means of making those sector agreements legally enforceable. We still have those agreements here. They're known as registered employment agreements. They are legally enforceable, and we are still very committed as a government to having those very basic standards enforceable. However, the debate this week and the debate generally in terms of the economy probably gives us a chance and an opportunity to focus on these agreements and to focus on how they're made, and maybe to introduce flexibilities into them which will allow workers and employers to come to agreements within their workplaces to make differences to standard wage policy, which will allow us to maintain employment in these workplaces, allow us to maintain viable businesses, and when a time comes that the businesses return to greater financial health, to increase the wage bill. And I would contend today that it may be necessary to consider whether an individual employer should be entitled to submit a claim to the Labour Court that for economic reasons he or she are unable to meet the terms agreed by joint labour committees. And as a government, we are committed to bring forward legislation to modernise and strengthen these systems, and we would propose including a rebalancing of the existing mechanism while providing for their continued operation. And this is no major change to our existing legislation. Under the minimum wage legislation, and I think a lot of people have lost sight of this this week, there is actually an inability to pay mechanism. A company that is subject to the minimum wage can, with the agreement of its employees, go to the Labour Court and seek a derogation from paying the minimum wage for a period of between 3 and 12 months. That mechanism is there. I suppose in the last number of years it hasn't needed to be used, or the case wasn't there to be made. And what we're proposing today is that will be extended across the board into the joint labour committees, which owe their genesis in this geographical area, but which haven't actually been radically reformed in about 60 years. We are now embarking on a consultation period of examining those committees, ensuring that they continue to defend the right of workers, which is important that they continue to maintain a minimum standard of work. This is not a race to the bottom, but also that they have a flexibility to reflect the economic tsunami that we're in at the moment, and they have a flexibility to become employment protection mechanisms as well as employment welfare protection mechanisms. I referred earlier to the journey that this country and this island has travelled. And I suppose a roadmap for the continuation of that journey is the comprehensive study on the all-island economy, which was launched by the British-Irish Intergovernment Conference in 2006, and which set out a very ambitious and a very attractive range of strategies and collaborative actions to maximise the competitive advantage of Ireland, the island. Since the restoration of the Northern Ireland Executive in May 2007, and since our general election here at that time, this current government has engaged constructively with Northern Ireland ministers to agree a range of initiatives to boost economic activity across the island. We are working hard on those shared priorities through the North-South Ministerial Council and in a range of other contacts between parliamentarians, between business organisations, between social and cultural organisations to do this. We have some excellent North-South bodies, such as Martine has referred to. For instance, Tourism Ireland is doing a major job in branding the island of Ireland. We don't see much of it here locally, but across the world, the island of Ireland is branded as a cohesive unit for tourism and for tourism marketing purposes. And we are achieving significant results there. We are also achieving significant cost savings in terms of our administration. The role and the importance of the body known as Intertrade Ireland has never been greater, as it seeks with our support to ensure that businesses north and south are able to take advantage of economic opportunities that are closer to home at a time of global economic turbulence. And we are, as a government, putting our money where our mouth is. Even in these difficult times. As a government, we are committed to maintaining a capital budget, and a capital budget that will be spent not just in this part of the island, but across the island. At the first meeting of the North-South Council that I referred to in 2007, we pledged £400 million to upgrade the A5 road to Derry and Letterkenny and the A8 from Belfast to Larne. Earlier this month, Ministers agreed the details of the first contribution of €9 million towards the preparatory and planning work, as well as procedures for future payments. And we are very firm in our conviction that an integrated and connected island with connecting and integrated infrastructure will have the best opportunity to fulfil the potential. So work is progressing rapidly on the Derry-Letterkenny road. So those of you who are travelling to McGill for the 40th or the 50th will benefit from that very direct investment and that very visible sign of all-island activity. Behind the scenes and less visible is the work that is underway to build an innovation island. And we are looking forward to discussing our plans for innovation policy and shared innovation policy with our Northern Ireland executive colleagues, and examining how we make the innovation that happens behind the scenes in our institutions and in our businesses a reality in terms of employment and in terms of product development. Our government and the Northern Ireland Executive are providing huge sums for cross-border research and innovation, ensuring that companies can access the best brains, the best technology worldwide to ensure that they are at the cutting edge. And we have many shared programmes across the island in many of our top-level, third-level institutions. The All-Ireland Innovation Voucher Initiative is one such initiative that is beginning to show a direct impact on the ground in terms of projects and in terms of employments. And we also have a very steady flow of collaborative research projects being approved under the All-Ireland Innovation Fund. For instance, last November, 10 programmes involving research collaborations between Queen's University Belfast and internationally recognised research centres in the south were approved for funding of £14.5 million by an all-island funding body. And the projects improved cover priorities such as future energy systems, which I'll come on to in a few minutes, mobile and communication technologies, chronic diseases and infections, nutrition and safe and traceable foods. All of those areas. And that £14.5 million investment will result in products, will result in jobs created from an all-island economy in the very near future. And last week I had the pleasure of visiting Sligo IT, just down the road from here, where 10 people from the Business Innovation Centre in Sligo were travelling this week to Silicon Valley with their very, very early stage projects developed under funding provided under similar programmes here in the south. So there is potential for us to make that investment real, to make it real in terms of job creation, real in terms of wealth creation on an all-island basis. And we are also realising further collaboration through the US-Ireland Research and Development Partnership, where the governments of the USA, of Ireland and of Northern Ireland are working together to advance scientific progress by awarding grants for research on a competitive basis in a range of areas to a range of researchers across colleges on the island. And the partnership offers us an excellent model of collaborative research for mutual gain involving more than just this island, maximising our partnerships across the world, maximising our ability to attract worldwide investment on the basis of a cohesive all-island policy. Intertrade Ireland, as I referred to, is working hard to identify and to realise opportunities to increase economic activity on an all-island basis and to increase business cooperation. Their role is to encourage that all-island cooperation on a north-south basis to the mutual benefit of our economies. And I think Intertrade Ireland have come into their own, in particular in the last 12 months, as companies who would have been used to very vigorous, very healthy international markets have been forced to retrench and focus again on the home economy and on their cost basis. And Intertrade Ireland, with their staff and with funding from both sides of the border, have been able to do that. This morning, Chairman, you focused on the green economy, and I gather you had some superb pieces on that. And I think personally that this is the area where we have most to gain as an island. Wind and wave do not recognise borders. The wind doesn't stop at the border in Strabane no more than it stops anywhere else. And we, as an island, have to come up with strategies of maximising our natural resources on an all-island basis in order to achieve jobs, to achieve reductions in our emissions, and to achieve the long-term foundation on an all-island basis for an economic resurgence. I think we should build on the outcome of the All-Ireland Grid study that Martina referred to, which was launched last year, and see how we can meet our ambitious targets on an all-island basis as opposed to on a jurisdiction basis. And Martina has referred to the single electricity market, which was achieved last year and which is beginning to drive changes. And I want to refer to what Pádraig McManus was talking about this morning, the need potentially to increase domestic ESB bills in order to allow businesses to get lower electricity charges. And I would very respectfully point out that in the 12 months from May 2008 to May 2009, the cost of wholesale electricity on this island was reduced by 50%, 50. And surely when that cost is being passed on to our big electricity providers, that domestic users shouldn't have to pay so that business can get cheaper rates. Let's see the 50% passed on to everybody and not have one sector having to pay for the other to get access. And we really, really, as an island, have to ensure, A, security of supply in our energy, because we are an island at the end of a very long pipeline, and we have the potential on this island to secure our supply. But in the intervening period, we have to work to get our energy prices down. And it is enormously frustrating when you see a wholesale price reduction of 50%. Domestic and small business price reductions are in the average of 12, 13% at the moment. There's a very big difference that needs to be given to maintain jobs and to enhance our competitiveness across this island. In relation to renewable economy, I think we should set ourselves a target for this island, that Ireland, the island, becomes the alternative energy hub, not just of Europe, but of the world. And in using the word alternative energy, I use it in its current way of thinking, because the alternative energy of today will be the energy of tomorrow. And if we position ourselves, if we invest in innovation that I've referred to, if we invest in infrastructure, if we are willing as a country and as a people to maybe leave our NIMBYism, that they're not in my backyard. No, we all want alternative energy. We don't want turbines. We all want wave power, but we don't want things in the middle of our bays. We've got to make choices here. If we want to exploit our economy and exploit our natural resources for the good of everybody, then let's do it on a shared basis, and let's not get borders get in the way. Let's our ambition take hold of that. I think, and I share Martina's concerns, that there are ways by working together that we can save money and also improve services. We have begun, and we have very early baby steps on this. So, for instance, patients here in Donegal can travel to Belfast for cancer services, and those living right on the border can access GP services in the other side of the border. But there is so many other ways that we can pool budgets, that we can pool talents, we can pool time, and it can be done quickly in a non-contentious manner, a non-politically contentious manner. So, for instance, the work that was done between the Road Safety Authority and the Northern Ireland Road Authority on road safety, it doesn't matter if you are a road traffic victim, whatever side of the border you are a victim. And that is a message that can be shared across the island. Similarly, on obesity, on suicide, on a range of health promotion issues, there's no border in health or health promotion or in trying to reduce road fatalities. And that is a way we need to share and to work on social messages as well. The whole notion of globalization and the era of globalization, which was so confidently and stridently thrown in our faces up till 18 months ago, has taken a knocking in the context of the financial crisis of the last 18 months. But it is still there, and it is still a very strong factor in the way we present ourselves as an island. It is having a very negative impact on our agriculture industry at the moment. It is having a potentially negative impact on a range of other industries, and that is why we must, as an island, fight as an island and share our resources in as far as we can as an island to do that. And when we come together, we have shown enormous strengths. We have shown enormous potential. We have shown ambition to take that on. And just because the financial crisis that we're going through is on a global nature, that doesn't mean the notion of globalization and its potential impact on us hasn't gone away. Equally, it may impact negatively in many sectors, but it offers us huge potential. And I think some of the research projects I refer to, some of the investments I refer to, are aimed at harnessing that potential and getting people to do it. Chairman, here in the Northwest, I think For the years of the Troubles and that journey I refer to, it took the brunt of the Troubles on both sides of the border, in terms of the lack of investment, in terms of the drowning of ambition. And that is why there's so much work going here in a focused manner at the moment. The Northwest Gateway Initiative, that a joint response from the government and from the executive can address the needs, is just the overall arch that covers that policy. And the ability of the people of the Northwest, I better include the West for my own sake, as an educated, as talented, as ambitious people, to attract industry, to attract people from all over the world to visit as tourists, was hampered by the border. And now we have the chance to take that border away, to invest in it, to take down those barriers. And through the Northwest Gateway Initiative that both governments are doing, we're doing that through a number of projects. There's a project called Project Kelvin. Nobody's probably heard of it unless you're into that side of the house. It's a 30 million investment, both from both governments, from both sides of the border. And you won't see it on the streets, you won't read about it in the papers, but what you will do when you live in this area, when you try to get broadband, when you try to relay the McGill Summer School next year across the world to Singapore or wherever they're listening from today, when you try to, your children go to school and use the computers in school, Project Kelvin and the fact that there's a submarine cable at Portrush will make their lives easier. And it's an unseen project, an unseen investment, but when people come in to set up business, broadband now is a basic requirement. High-speed broadband is more important than roads. It's more important than the things we used to think were important. And Project Kelvin is aimed at ensuring the Northwest is well up there in terms of it. Again, another very practical but probably invisible example of how we're doing things. Letterkenny IT on the other side of the mountain here, and the University of Ulster across the island are working on a range of projects specific to the Northwest and specific to employment and academic collaboration here in the Northwest. Our spatial planning units are beginning to come together. We are currently revising the National Spatial Strategy here in the South, as they are in the North, and there will be common language, common objectives in relation to the Northwest and to exploiting all the advantages here from the Northwest. So when you think of initiatives such as Kelvin, and if you go away today and think of Kelvin the next time you turn on your computer, the motorway programs I've spoken about, the invisible but hugely important work underway in our third level institutions in innovation, the work of agencies like Intertrade, like Tourism Ireland, like the Languages Body, working behind the scenes, empowering communities, empowering individuals on enterprise, on basic community spirit. When you reflect on that, that is how far we've come. That the no of 1985 and the very loud no has moved on to, yes, we can do things in these areas. And what I'm saying today is that there's so many other areas we can do things by just exploiting what's outside our door, what's going around, winding through our air, and the rain and the wind that we, particularly at this time of year, object to so much, is really a way that we are going to create long-term prosperity. It's a way that we're going to keep people in our communities in rural Ireland. And I want to refer to what Martina said in relation to agriculture. There is no sector under the pressure that agriculture is at the moment. And we have in Ireland, on this island, the food basket of Europe. People are crying out for quality food. They're crying out in the light of all of the health scares, of all of the things that have gone wrong with food. And we need to work together to ensure that we get access to the markets with our quality product, with our quality produce, that we have the best marketing available. We'll never be the cheapest, no matter what side of the border we come from. But do we want to be in a time when people are craving health and craving quality that seems to be missing in so many ways? Chairman, there are in excess of 500,000 people today without jobs on this island that we know of. There are many more may not be signing on. As politicians, as business leaders, as civic leaders, and as people with an interest in society, and let's face it, if you are here in Glenties on a Friday afternoon in July to listen to myself and Martina, no offence, you have an interest in society. We owe it to those 500,000 who will probably be a lot higher to ensure that there's no blockage to them getting jobs, that there's no political with a small p blockage to them getting out in the morning and getting a job. They know of 1985 must give away to, yes, we can do this if it's going to create jobs. And there will always be political difficulties, and we don't have a magic wand to wave them away. I'm looking at some of the exhibitions here around me, and that's how long they go back, and back further than that, plantations of Ulsters and before the flight. You're not going to change that very quickly, but at least we owe it to those 500,000 people that we're going to make sure we've done everything to try and get them back into a job, and that the small p objections of previous years give way to a priority of employment. So Gormalga the Ganacahirlik, agus Cogordigus, Gogochdina, atá Parchak Lesson Skell Sour. I gather there's one more session left. I wish you every success for it. I see the director here looking weary at the thought of another session, but I'm sure he'll pick himself up and get through the night. Congratulations on what has been a huge week. It's literally, the Dáil the duest respects to the journalists who are here. I see Dagan there. It was like a circus last week. The journalists were packing up to move to Glenties and cover everything from Glenties. And again, I think it's really important. That wouldn't happen. You would not be here. But for very small people with no economic interest in Glenties, they're not going to make any money out of this week, as is the case in so many parishes right across this island. They do it because they love their community. They do it on this occasion because they love debate and discourse. And we take it for granted. You just arrived to a festival, or you arrived up here last Sunday, everything was set for you, and you'll pack off again tomorrow, and you'll come back again next year, hopefully on better roads. But we really owe a big debt of gratitude to the committee here and to committees right across this island who make summer in Ireland such a unique experience. So, Gormina Mahagov.